Hi, welcome to the Gamesplainer. I'm Jeff the Gamesplainer, and today I'm Gamesplaining March 2020. So it is time for my top 10 for March. As with other months, it's just a matter of the games I've played, pull down to the top 10, the best games that I have played this month. So let's get straight into it. Number 10 is a new game that I hadn't really come across. It was released last year, and I will probably do a game explanation of it relatively soon. Colors of Paris is my number 10 game. In this game, you are trying to mix up colors and do certain things on an action selection board. There are parts of the board that you're not able to use on each turn and it just kind of keeps turning around, making things not able to be used all the time. I really kind of like that. It's a nice difference on the action selection idea of what we can go for, because generally you'll have an action selection board, so the board's there and you're just kind of adding stuff to it. They might add some extra things, but this one takes out various combinations of things each time, so you need to kind of really nut into what you like and what you dislike, or what you're going after each time. The other benefit of this one is that you can pick up just paint, but you pick up a certain amount of paint depending on where your little thing is down on your board, and some of the things allow you to push that up further. And there's this real crunch of push and pull on, oh, do I just want the number of paints, or do I want to do a mix of these paints, or do I want to up the ability to do stuff in the future? My number 9 is Airship City. Airship City was a game that was released not to the American market, I'm assuming not in English. In fact, it was released but not able to be got outside of Europe or outside of, I'm not even sure where it was originally done. It may even be an Asian game. I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter. But they've done a re-release this year of Airship City that has enabled people in America and Australia, etc., to be able to get their hands on it. So I really appreciate that. With Airship City, it's you have two airships that you're moving around, so you can bring in some resources, or you can use those resources to purchase other airships, which you might sell or which you might donate, which give you other benefits. And there's a real crunch of, oh, if I do this, I can do that. Is that going to get me as many points as doing this? And finding that right way through is actually really good thing. You'll notice in my gamesplanation that this is actually a 3 or 4 player game. It's not a 2-player game. I have been playing it 2 players, but it's not a 2-player game. I think just because the 2-player allows you to be moving your airships without landing on top of other airships, whereas in the 3 or 4-player game, the board gets a little bit more full up, so you're overlapping on what other people are doing, and you get a benefit whenever your airship is sitting somewhere and someone else uses that spot. You will get a benefit. So I think that it's got the 3 to 4 player marker on it simply so that you can get those benefits more often. It's a more enjoyable game, I guess. My number 8 is a game that was out a long time ago. I believe that the company, I think it's Ludenote, are doing a re-release of it sometime soon. They just released the new artwork for the box cover. So the game is Lewis and Clark, The Expedition. I really like this game. It's a game that keeps coming back to my table as a really nice, crunchy push and pull of, oh, I need to do this and this and this to be able to enable that boat to move forward. Because the whole game is trying to get your boat or your canoe or your raft or whatever you want to call it from point A all the way to the west coast, I'm assuming, of America. And you have to use various cards in your hand to manipulate that action. But this has that intricate thing of, when I play a card, I need to have a native next to it, and that will come on the back of another card or on a meeple. But if I've got guys that I've played out, I'm going to have to pay some spaces for having them at the end of my turn. There's a spot where you're able to collect extra cards into your hand, which will give you extra benefits. And that's a really good thing to do. But you need to, when you're pulling cards into your hand, probably get 2 cards each time you do it, so that you don't have a card left over. Because each card left over that you haven't used at the end of your round, it's going to cost you distance on that river. My number 7 game is another game that has a little bit of age to it. It's been around for a few years. I've only just done the Gamesplainer on this one from the last couple of weeks, Riverboat. And I say in that one that I'm not a fan of this one manipulation of where you put the Harbour Master. The whole idea of it is that you're trying to move the Harbour Master forward so that you can score all the points behind where he's at. But whoever is the furthest forward will get every point. Everyone else only gets half those points, and that really frustrates me. I think that doesn't need to be there. The rest of the game, however, is really solid, really good. You're building up your spaces in your gardens to have various numbers of resource creating fields, and you turn those fields in to get different harbour numbers, and those harbour numbers give you different benefits. And there's a real crunch on the push and pull on that, oh, I need to get that card, so I need to get this up to this many people in order to get that and to get this. There's a lot going on with that. I think it's a really good game. My number 6 game is a game that has come up often, and I think is going to hit this list pretty much every time it gets played. Aquasphere. Now, Aquasphere is a filled game, but it's one of the lesser known filled games. I think that it deserves to be known. It's a really solid game. There's not a whole bunch that you're able to do with it, but within the not whole bunch, there's a whole bunch you need to do, and there's a crunch of push-pull on needing to get your guys through this map of underwaterness. Each time you move, it's going to cost you some time, and your time is a resource in this game. The ability for you to do each thing that you wish to do isn't necessarily going to happen, simply because you have a little map of arrows that you're moving through, that in order to do this one, you have to have done that one, because this one will shoot you off to those 2 spots, that one will shoot you to those 2 spots, and so there's a possibility of getting stuck into a spot where I need this one, but I need this one as well, and then you have to make a choice because those two don't have arrows between them. Or you're going to have to go this way and not have that, or go this way and not have that. And having that push and pull and that crunch on, oh, this is how to do this and this, is really cool and moves forward. My number 5 game is Deep Blue. Now, this is a game that I didn't necessarily expect to see in my top 10s, let alone to be so high in my top 10s. There's a real nice crunch on this game. The whole idea of it is you have 2 ships and you're moving from this spot to this spot to this spot to this spot around this map, and when you're on the spot, you can dive at any point that you wish, and you're pulling things out of the bag, and if you pull too much of one thing, then you're not able to take all of the stuff. But within that, you're able to take some cards which will enable you to be able to take more of, say, the black gems coming out of the bag, or different things like that, or different ones that will get you full amounts of points. You play a card out of your hand to do something, so you might play a card to move, but that card also had some money on it, which would have helped you buy cards here, and you're not able to do that because you played there. And when you pick cards up, you're only able to pick 3 of them up. So if you've got 10 cards out there, you're going to get 3 back in your hand. You're probably going to have to do that action a couple of times to get the cards that you wish to have back in your hand before you take the dive. But you're desperately trying to get those cards back before someone else dives, because if they dive on the same square you're on, you're diving with them. And there's a real fun crunch on this game that I didn't expect to be there. I felt like this game was a lot lighter than it is. My number 4 game is a game that's been around for a really long time. So much so that it got a re-release of an updated funky version that I spent a heck of a lot of money on. Suburbia. If you are someone who has owned Suburbia for a while, you won't recognize that package. That was an extraordinarily expensive package, but within that, it has the base game plus all of the expansion material that's ever been released. And so there's a lot going on that you can do with that game. It's really similar to the Castles of Mad King Ludwig, and that kind of idea of I get a tile, and that tile is going to directly be affected and then ongoingly affect other tiles that I get into my city. And this whole, oh, if I get that, then this happens, but I've got to put it over here because if I put it here, it's going to get negatives. And that whole thing of push-pull is a really wonderful game. I need to get into some of the expansion material to see how that changes the core concept of it. But the actual game itself is really nice and kind of moves through, and it just kind of seems to work. My number 3 game is from my favorite designer, Masada. Escape Plan. Out of all of Vitalis Hutter's games, this is probably the game that I am the least in love with. I really like it, don't misunderstand me, but it's kind of at the bottom of the pile of his games. However, I have put this really high on my list of games that I've enjoyed playing for last month, simply because I really enjoyed the game. There were only two of us playing, and I was running away with it, but I ended up losing. There's a really funky little rule that in this game that if you don't escape by the end of the last round, then you cannot win. You have given up your ability to even be placed. If you're the first out of a city, that's fine, you're first out. If you're the second out, it's going to cost you 10 money. And what I found was I didn't have 10 money. I wasn't able to get the 10 money to be able to escape on that last one, even though it looked like I was really far ahead. And I kind of really like that in the game. It makes you think, oh, don't hang around. Or if you are going to hang around to get some other stuff in, you've got to make darn sure that you've got enough to be able to get out of the city. It's got a crunch to it, which all of Vitalis games do. They're not quite as crunchy as, say, the Gallerist or Lisboa or any of those really, really heavy games. But it's still quite heavy for what it is. My number 2 game is a game that was released as a board game version of a computer game. City Skylines. I have not played the computer game. I'm not aware of the computer game. I'm aware of it, but I've never played it. I've never seen it because I'm not a computer game player. But I really appreciate this game. Each game I've played, I've never been able to beat it. It's a co-op game, and you're turning over a bit of the city, and you're pulling out cards, and those cards tell you what type of building can be built. It's going to cost you some money, or it's going to cost you some this, or it's going to get more pollution, or there's a whole bunch of different tracks that are moving forward and back. Each time that you kind of take, there's an action that finishes a board or starts a new board, and part of that action is to get the points from it. The number of points have been in the negatives. I've been maybe 1 or 2 points and in that space, and I've never once won the game. I've never managed to get to the last lot of that scoring. I will keep trying. I'm going to do the Gamesplainer on this game relatively soon, so look out for it so you can get a feel for how the game actually plays and if this is a game that you would appreciate. But there's a real crunch, there's a real hard on it, and I think that with co-op games that you need those games that have the crunch that you don't beat all the time, because if you beat them all the time, there's no real point in playing them because you know you're going to win. Which now brings me down to my number 1 game, Ecos First Continent. While I really like Ecos First Continent, I'm in this 2 minds about it. Each time I kind of look at it and go, it feels a little bit because there's actual kind of naturalness to the look of the pieces or the chits. So they're talking about animals that will be bred into spaces, and they look like they're real animals, not art versions of real animals, and that should put me off. I don't know why it should put me off, but it should. But when I'm playing this game, it's really crunchy and fun, and there's just all these different paths to how to play it. So each time you play, you're going to have something slightly different going on because you've got a different deck, I guess, that you're using. One deck that I discovered early on in my plays of it was that I found really relatively easy to play with. Someone else was playing with that deck this time, and they really did poorly. We finished the game and they were still back at like 10 points. And they weren't having fun. You could feel it by the end. I think they weren't having fun because they realized how to play far too late, rather than making the realization that everyone else had made relatively early. And I think this is the kind of the push and pull on this game, is getting to a point where you know what you're doing, or you know what you're trying to do, and then finding a way through the cards that you happen to have in your hand that are going to enable you to do that. Look, I think that Ecos First Continent is a really, really fun game, a really good game, and it's worthwhile having a look at. If you are not aware of it, I have done the Gamesplainer on it, so please have a look for that one. I'll leave it there. If you have any games that you would like to be gamesplained, please shoot me an email to thegamesplainer@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter @thegamesplainer to keep up to date with the games I'm playing. Subscribe to my videos to keep up to date with the games that I'm gamesplaining. And until next time, enjoy gaming.